Part 37. The Liu family's wife is so sweet. Author, Yoon. Chapter 361. Chapter 361, Being Squeezed. I know what you want to say. Don't think about something that is there or not. Study hard, otherwise you will be punished by the school. If it is serious, you will be expelled. Jang Wanan also followed her example. After saying that, Jang Wanan also left without even looking at her. This woman is really annoying. She is obviously nosy but still wants to be good to losers who would not blindly fall in love with her, because she, Jang Wanan, will always be losers who's little treasure. Jang Wanan just rang the school bell when she returned to the classroom. As soon as she sat down in her seat, Su Jiao turned around and grabbed her hand and asked nervously, "How is it? How is it? Why are you here?" Jang Wanan looked at her in surprise, and then looked at the seat next to him. He Chiu and Su Jiao had already changed their seats in front of her. "It's not important. We will go back in the next class." "How are you?" Su Jiao said, waving her hands. Jang Wanan didn't react, and even felt confused. "What is it like?" "I just saw losers who passing by here," Su Jiao pointed out the window and said. "What's wrong?" Jang Wanan was still confused. "Didn't you tell him about Zhang Baihui's dinner date?" Jang Wanan felt a headache when she thought about this. She touched her twitching temples and shook her head. "I haven't said it yet. I haven't decided what to say yet." "Then you just..." Su Jiao hesitated and pointed to Jang Wanan and then outside. Jang Wanan sighed and said, "I originally wanted to say it, but the study committee member did something bad and even wanted the contact information of my little Jojo, which made me so angry." Jang Wanan got angry thinking about it. Su Jiao turned her head and glanced at the position of the study committee member, only to find that she was also looking over her shoulder. Their eyes met and neither of them hid. The study committee member actually smiled at her. To be precise, he should be smiling at Jang Wanan. Jang Wanan only looked up and didn't make any response. Su Jiao also turned around. She asked Jang Wanan, "Then when will you tell me?" "Noon, or evening, anyway. Jiang Baihui hasn't even decided on a meal time yet," Jang Wanan said. "Then let's set a time for dinner." "He Chiu, come on," Su Jiao said and nudged He Chiu with her elbow. "It's me again? I don't have good things. When things like this happen, it's all me. It's in class, and the teacher will find out soon," He Chiu said helplessly. He felt that he had been squeezed a lot by Su Jiao recently. "Aren't you afraid of the teacher finding out when you play games?" Su Jiao lowered his head and glanced at He Chiu's dexterous hands, and his faint voice reached He Chiu's ears. He Chiu nodded. Yes, he was squeezed. He Chiu closed the game interface and opened the chat interface. He asked in the group when they would get together, and Zhang Baihui quickly replied, "It depends on your time. I have time." He Chiu told the two of them his answer. Su Jiao and Jang Wanan looked at each other and thought, how come he has time? Doesn't he need to go to school? Just as he was wondering, He Chiu spoke up and said, "Brother Bei is asking you." He pointed at Jang Wanan. Jang Wanan was shocked. This was the first time she was mentioned in the group. "What are you asking?" Jang Wanan took a few seconds to respond. "Ask if you want to get together." "Let's get together," Jang Wanan answered quickly this time. "I told him that you didn't bring your mobile phone, otherwise, you might think too much when you were in the group but didn't say a word," He Chiu said. Jang Wanan nodded, but she didn't think there was anything wrong with not replying. Zhang Baihui should know that she didn't bring her mobile phone. A few people wanted to continue talking, but as soon as they opened their mouths, the teacher became furious. End of this chapter. The Liu family's wife is so sweet. Author, Yoon. Chapter 362. Chapter 362 Penalty Standing. I've been watching you three for a long time. Why do you three have so much to talk about? Can't you say it after class? I've wasted your classmates' time again by telling you, stand back. So the three people walked to the back with their books in hand while everyone looked at them as if they were laughing. What do you think Zhang Baihui was doing during the period when he didn't show up? Su Xiao, who was standing at the back, covered his face with a book and still spoke dishonestly. Perhaps he is going to participate in a competition. He wants to compete among brothers and sisters to see if he has the ability to inherit his father's legacy. He Chiu was very imaginative. What He Chiu was talking about among the brothers and sisters, Zhang Wanan suddenly had an idea flash in her mind. She knew that Zhang Baihui's parents were divorced and Jiang's mother opened a wonton shop, so why didn't they go there when Zhang Baihui left without saying a word? Take a look. Zhang Wanan didn't say anything even as he thought about it. Until Su Xiaojiao interrupted her thoughts. Zhang Baihui is an only child. Whether you want to compete or not depends on your imagination. Then guess, where do you think my brother Bei went? What did he do? He Chiu elbowed Zhang Wanan, who was silent. How could I know? If I had known, wouldn't I have gone to him a long time ago? OMG, He Chiu's eyes widened in surprise, as if he had discovered some shocking secret. Why are you exaggerating? Su Xiaojiao stepped on He Chiu. Listen to her. She said that if she knew, she would go find it. If Brother Lu finds out about this, then there will be something good to watch. He Chiu looked at Zhang Wanan with a smirk on his face. The two girls were speechless for a while. Zhang Wanan said helplessly, I just thought about it but didn't take any action. You can just think about it and still want to take action. He Chiu still had that exaggerated expression. Get out. Zhang Wanan was so annoyed by him that he couldn't bear it. He is deliberately misinterpreting his meaning. Then what time should we choose? Su Xiaojiao stretched his head forward to look at Zhang Wanan, who was blocked by He Chiu. He Chiu, a big fool standing between the two of them, was really in the way. We only have time at the end of Saturday, right? Then let's set a day at the end of Saturday. When the time was set, Su Xiaojiao reached out and poked He Chiu and said, send a message. Why me again? He Chiu was a little excited, and his voice rose a few degrees. Suddenly everyone turned around to look at the three of them. The three of them felt their faces turn red and even feel hot. They felt embarrassed and tacitly covered their faces with the books. It's easier for you to stand behind and talk, isn't it? And it's getting worse? What's the matter? Come to the podium and speak. This class time is reserved for you. You speak. The teacher was really angry. I shouted loudly from above and you didn't listen. I even muttered in a low voice, what do you want? The teacher asked loudly again. I don't want to do anything, He Chiu muttered unconvincedly. Su Xiaojiao turned around and rolled her eyes at him, thinking that it wasn't because He Chiu was so excited just now. If it weren't for him, it wouldn't be too embarrassing. He Chiu also admired her, thinking that it was because he was squeezed by her that he was so excited that he spoke a little louder. One more time, you three go out and stand, and call your parents here, the teacher said very seriously, not like a joke. The three of them finally became honest after being talked to by the teacher, and they didn't murmur again after the class, for fear that their parents would be called over, which would not be a glorious event. As soon as the bell rang and lunchtime came, the family rushed out. Since the three of them had been standing at the back door for the whole class, they threw away the books in their hands and rushed out as fast as possible. The issue of being forced to stand has been forgotten. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Lu family's wife is so sweet. Author, Yun. Chapter 363. Chapter 363. The stupidest and wrong thing I have done in my life. Run faster, I won't have anything to eat for a while. I'm starved to death after standing for a whole class, Su Jiao shouted anxiously. I'll treat you to a big chicken drumstick later, He Chiu said as he ran, even reaching out to gesture. That's enough, bro. The three people quickly ran to the restaurant. Although they were fast enough, there were already many people in the restaurant. The three people found a window and lined up. Why don't you invite my brother Bei to the school cafeteria? He Chiu suddenly had a whim. How can that be done? He is not a student of this school, and he can't get in. Su Jiao patted him on the back and immediately rejected the idea. Zhang Wanan stood at the back and stared straight ahead without saying anything. In fact, if Zhang Baihui had come that day, he would have been a student of this school, and they might still be roommates, but he didn't come. When I think about it, I feel a little regretful. Zhang Wanan was lost in thought when suddenly a black shadow hit her head and enveloped her. Zhang Wanan looked up and saw Lu Zizhu's beautiful face. Huh, why don't you line up, don't you want to eat? Zhang Wanan saw Lu Zizhu suddenly appearing with a confused look on his face. Lu Zizhu didn't say anything. He reached out and hooked Zhang Wanan's shoulder with his arm and took her out of the team. What are you doing? I haven't bought any food yet, and I still need to eat. Zhang Wanan clapped his hand anxiously, but he was too tight. Lu Zizhu's actions attracted the attention of many people, and now they are all looking this way, thinking about catching some gossip information. So many people are watching, Zhang Wanan reminded in a low voice with a blushing face. I don't know what Lu Zizhu is pumping. With so many people in the restaurant, he looks like this. Is it wrong for my brother to buy food for his sister a long time ago and take her out of the team? Lu Zizhu said in a loud voice. Then he coldly glanced around at those who were looking at them. Zhang Wanan breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Lu Zizhu didn't do anything stupid, and he was smart enough to say that they were siblings, so those people probably wouldn't have anything to say and wouldn't be too interested in their affairs. Even if you say it, it won't be ridiculous. Waiting away from the crowd, Zhang Wanan poked Lu Zizhu. You've been a little arrogant lately, almost arrogant. Lu Zizhu smiled, really? Zhang Wanan nodded vigorously. I've always been like this, Lu Zizhu said calmly. Zhang Wanan had nothing to say for a while until he walked to the familiar table. Food was already placed on the table. Zhang Wanan walked over and sat down, feeling incredible. I thought you were lying to me. Did you really buy it? Why did you come out so early? She rubbed her hands while looking at the food on the plate, which she liked. When did I lie to you? Lu Zizhu looked at her funny. Zhang Wanan's face darkened, and he suddenly said, Dad's matter. Lu Zizhu felt his mind go blank for a moment, and even the smile at the corner of his mouth became stiff. Enan. Lu Zizhu called softly but was interrupted before he could say anything. I didn't want to mention this matter. It's over. Don't say anything else. I just asked you why you came out so early and you haven't answered me yet. Zhang Wanan took the initiative to change the subject. Lu Zizhu breathed a long sigh of relief. He thought Zhang Wanan was going to mention that matter again. It was the stupidest and wrong thing he had done in his life. I had to finish the test paper today and asked the teacher to come out a few minutes early, Lu Zizhu explained. Then I really hope that you will do test papers every day after class, and that you can buy food and wait for me early every day, so that I can have a hot meal after class. As he spoke, Zhang Wanan began to fantasize about being able to eat delicious food without queuing up after class. End of this chapter. The Lu family's wife is so sweet. Author, Yun. Chapter 364. Chapter 364. It's easy for you to find a girlfriend. Okay, Lu Zizhu answered simply. Huh, Zhang Wanan was surprised. I said yes, this is nothing, and it will be like this from now on, Lu Zizhu said firmly. Really? Zhang Wanan couldn't believe it. Lu Zizhu nodded firmly. In the days to come, Lu Zizhu always had to leave a few minutes early because of Zhang Wanan's words. He studied well and could be self-taught even if he didn't attend class, so the teachers didn't have any objection to him leaving a few minutes early. It's just that this matter will make some students jealous. Because red eye is really scary. The two of them had already eaten more than half of their meal when He Chiu and Su Jiao arrived belatedly with their food. They also ran to the restaurant with all their might and the gap was so big. He Chiu, you can't imitate Brother Lu, the most considerate boyfriend to his girlfriend in today's society. Su Jiao couldn't help complaining. He Chiu gave her a blank look and said, "We are boyfriend and girlfriend. Who do we think we are? Why do you want me to be considerate to you?" Su Jiao was speechless. "Brother, it's so easy for you to find a girlfriend," Lu Zhu said quietly with interest. "Brother, women are really troublesome, He Chiu wanted to continue talking, but before he could say much, he felt the terrifying looks from Su Jiao and Zhang Wanan on both sides, and then he shut up and stopped talking. Zhang Wanan and Lu Zhu did not leave directly after eating, but sat and waited for the two of them. During this period, Zhang Wanan had been thinking about how to tell Lu Zhu about Zhang Baihui's sudden appearance and a dinner date. Lu Zhu's eyes never left Zhang Wanan, and he quickly realized that she had something to say, but the constipated expression on her face clearly meant that she didn't dare to say it and was struggling. "Anan, are you worried?" Lu Zhu asked. Zhang Wanan was shocked back to her senses by his words. She shook her head again and again. Lu Zhu had long seen through her worried little heart and found her look funny. He leaned forward and tapped his fingers on the dining table a few times. "That means you have something on your mind. You might as well talk about it. Listen." Zhang Wanan bit her lip and looked at Su Jiao and He Chiu from the corner of her eye. She saw that the two foodies were munching on the chicken legs and their faces were shiny, and they didn't even notice her. It is impossible to rely on them to assist. That, Zhang Baihui showed up. Zhang Wanan hesitated for a long time before speaking. Lu Zhu raised his eyebrows, as if he wasn't surprised at all. "What's the matter? Aren't you surprised?" Zhang Wanan's eyes widened. "No, as long as there is no news of a person's death, it won't be too surprising if he appears again. Well, at least that's what I think." He made an appointment to have dinner. Perhaps fearing that Lu Zhu would disagree, Zhang Wanan immediately added, "All three of us will go." Yeah, Lu Zhu nodded. "Agreed." Zhang Wanan looked disbelieving, wondering when Lu Zhu was so easy to talk to. So easy. Zhang Wanan felt that things were definitely not that simple. "What if I cry, make trouble, and hang myself to stop you?" Zhang Wanan felt that Lu Zhu was a little strange today. This was easy to talk about. If he had known about it, she would not be so uneasy. "Hey, you two, don't eat your ancestors," Zhang Wanan shouted excitedly at the two people who seemed to have blocked outside information. "What's wrong?" The two of them raised their heads in unison, their confused expressions and words were surprisingly consistent. "What happened today? Is she dreaming?" "My little Jojo has agreed to our dinner party," Zhang Wanan said proudly and arrogantly. This time it was Su Jiao and He Chiu who were surprised, but they didn't show it much and only suppressed their excitement. End of this chapter. The Lu family's wife is so sweet. Author, Yun. Chapter 365. Chapter 365, Making People Frightened. "Brother, you are so kind." He Chiu stretched out his oily hand and was about to shake Lu Zhu's hand excitedly, but after reacting, he took it back in embarrassment. "Am I that scary in your eyes?" Lu Zhu was a little confused. Has he always been a powerful character in the eyes of others, even the kind of character that makes people fear him? Su Jiao was probably a little excited because Lu Zhu agreed. She stretched out her hand and gestured, a little bit, without fear of death. Lu Zhu chuckled helplessly and said nothing. Lu Zhu was not annoyed but instead chuckled, which made the three of them more courageous. They wanted to drag him and talk for a long time, because Lu Zhu was so talkative today. It seems that no matter what you say, nothing will make you angry. Brother, we thought it would take a long time for you to agree, but we didn't expect it to be so easy, Hichayu said. Don't even look at who this is my little boat. Jiangwanan began to flatter her arrogantly. Suqiaojiao and Hichayu looked at her with disdain, which meant that loses who agreed. If he didn't agree, he wouldn't know where to hide and cry. The words spoken by several people suddenly made the silent loses who recognize himself clearly, as well as Suqiaojiao and Hichayu. I used to sit together to eat together and didn't see them as much as they said. It seemed that he was taking care of him. Even if it was compensation today, he said nothing and allowed a few people to tease him. Would you be surprised if I went there on the day of your party? Loses whose words silenced the three chattering people instantly. Just know that things are not that simple. Brother, are you going? Hichayu asked cautiously, as if he had returned to the way he did before when he didn't dare to talk to loses who. Maybe, I'll prepare you mentally so that you don't go too suddenly. What are you going to do? Jiangwanan asked nervously. Just looking around. What catches your eyes? Let's see how Jiangbai is doing. After all, he hasn't appeared for so long. Don't go. The atmosphere will become very awkward if you go, Jiangwanan said with disgust. Am I so disliked by you? It's not that, it's just that, well, you don't like Zhang Baihui, and Zhang Baihui hasn't communicated with you. I'm afraid you will be embarrassed, Jiangwanan explained. Are you afraid that we will fight? I'm not that naive, unless he really touches my bottom line. Jiangwanan blushed and said nothing after being guessed. Go, it should be fine. Hichayu leaned over and said cautiously. Loses who glanced at him appreciatively, thinking that this kid is really sensible. Then do you want to say hello to Zhang Baihui in advance? Suqiaojiao asked. What's wrong? You all agree that loses who went, right? Jiangwanan looked at the two people and asked. The two nodded in agreement. Jiangwanan suddenly felt like an outsider at this moment, and the three of them were good friends. I want to say hello to you, Jiangwanan said with a headache. I'll go, Hichayu said, and had already taken out his mobile phone. This time he was not afraid of being discovered by passing teachers or reported by his classmates. After Hichayu finished speaking in the group, Jiang Baihui waited more than 10 minutes before replying. He said, okay. It's done. Hichayu clapped his hands and waved his phone in front of several people like a show-off. Now that everything that needs to be said has been said, everything that needs to be done has been done, and the food has been eaten, looking at the time, I feel that there is no reason to continue sitting here, so the four of them got up and walked out. Four people walking, two in front and two behind, are very eye-catching in the restaurant. It is simply a beautiful scenery. Some people in the restaurant had not left yet, so there was another murmur. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Liu family's wife is so sweet. Author, Yun. Chapter 366. Chapter 366, strange yet familiar. Some people in the restaurant had not left yet, so they started to murmur again as they watched the four people walking out. Did you see those four people? 3 of them are from the class next to us. The tallest one is. I know the tallest one, Senior Liu. I even wrote a love letter to him. The girl's cheeks turned red when she mentioned this. It seems that they have an unusual relationship. That's what I think, that's just a friend. No, we must be 2 and 2 now, but no one noticed it. Huh? No way, my Senior Liu, could it be? The girl said, covering her heart in pain. Hey, you, please stop daydreaming. It seems that Senior Liu has a good career, the girl sighed. How many girls in this school regard loses who as the lover of their dreams? Anyone who gets together with loses who will definitely become a public enemy. Fortunately, the two people did not make it public, otherwise Jongwanan would be the target of siege now. Asterisk. Tang Yu took Jongwanan home directly after school in the afternoon. Jongwanan was a little shocked when she saw the scene in her home. From the living room to the kitchen and bedroom, the room was in a mess. Clothes and other things were scattered all over the floor. There was no place to stand in such a big house. Did a thief break into the house? Jongwanan looked at Tang Yu in disbelief and asked. Tang Yu smiled sheepishly and explained, Mom came back early from the store today. I had nothing to do, so I wanted to clean it up. Unexpectedly, the more I cleaned it up, the more messy it became. I called someone, they will probably arrive soon. As he spoke, Tang Yu raised his hand and looked at his watch. She was thinking about tidying up the room, but when she was injured, her mind felt messy, and when she looked at the mess, she felt even more messy. Inexplicably, she just wanted to lose her temper. But she was suppressed in the end. She sat in the messy room all afternoon, and finally came to her senses and remembered to ask the housekeeper to come and clean up the house. Jongwanan frowned and looked at Tang Yu carefully. Tang Yu felt uncomfortable when she looked at her. He reached out and touched his face and asked, Is there something on Mom's face? Jongwanan shook his head, No. Just when Jongwanan was about to say something, the doorbell rang, so she swallowed back all the words that came to her lips. Tang Yu went to open the door, and the cleaner came. Jongwanan looked at it and shouted, Mom, I'm going back to my room to do my homework. Tang Yu responded and Jongwanan went back to the room and closed the door. Jongwanan returned to the room and carefully thought about the past few days. Looking at Tang Yu's recent mental state, she always felt that something was wrong. Maybe Tang Yu was too tired in the past few years, as Lin 11 said. She opened a store not long after she recovered from the hospital, and then she couldn't see anyone every day. It seemed that she was really under a lot of pressure and should give herself a holiday. Jongwanan thought that she should persuade Tang Yu to let her rest. Anan, Mom went out to buy some things and will be back in a while. You wait at home, Tang Yu shouted outside. Jongwanan responded in the room and then heard the sound of Tang Yu closing the door. Jongwanan didn't go out after Tang Yu left. When she was a little tired from doing her homework and was about to go out to get some water, she remembered that there was an ant cleaning at home. Little girl, can you put this here? The aunt asked when she saw someone finally came out and picked up the photo lying on the ground. Auntie saw that it was a photo of their family. In Auntie's opinion, the family photo should be placed in a place where it is easy to see. Jongwanan also thought the same. She walked over and took the photo, put it in her hand and gently touched her father's face a few times, feeling strange yet familiar at the same time. How nice the family in the picture is, but now there are only two of them left, and that picture was taken when Jongwanan was very young. They were so sorry that they didn't even have a family picture of her when she grew up. End of this chapter. The Lu family's wife is so sweet. Author, Yoon. Chapter 367. Chapter 367. This should not be placed here. Let me put it, Jongwanan said after a while, and then gently put it on the TV cabinet. Auntie smiled and nodded and continued to clean up other places. Jongwanan finished drinking a glass of water and Tang Yu came back, but as soon as he entered the door, Jongwanan smelled the smell of second-hand smoke. When Jongwanan approached Tang Yu, she realized that this was the smell that Tang Yu had brought back. Mom, why do you smell like cigarettes? Jongwanan asked with a frown. The moment he asked the question, an answer came to Jongwanan's mind. Tang Yu might have been smoking. Oh, when I just came back, an old man asked for directions. I guess the smell of his smoking got on my clothes, Tang Yu said and smelled the smell on himself. It is indeed a bit pungent. Jongwanan was relieved after hearing Tang Yu's explanation. She thought her mother was smoking, and that stuff was not healthy. I'm going to change my clothes, Tang Yu said and was about to walk into the room. Mom, didn't you go shopping? Where are the things you bought? Zhang Wanan looked at Tang Yu, who was empty-handed, and still had questions. Tang Yu paused, there are no more supermarkets. Zhang Wanan nodded thoughtfully and said no more. Tang Yu returned to the room, closed the door, leaned against the door panel, took a deep breath, closed her eyes and walked towards the closet. Going to the closet, she searched her pockets for the things she just bought and put them on the bed. Then she found some clothes and changed them. What's for dinner? Tang Yu asked when he went out and saw Zhang Wanan still sitting outside. Zhang Wanan thought for a while and shook his head. There was nothing he wanted to eat. Tang Yu smiled helplessly, can I make braised pork ribs for you? How about making some fish soup? Zhang Wanan thought about it and suddenly felt an appetite, and nodded vigorously. Tang Yu nodded and walked towards the kitchen. When he passed by his aunt, she stopped and said, Auntie, do you have any skills for making braised pork ribs and fish soup? How do you make them delicious? The aunt who was asked said a few in succession, and then told Tang Yu about her own methods while cleaning up, and Tang Yu wrote them down one by one. She always feels that what she cooks is not delicious, and maybe if she shares her experience with more people, it will taste better. After listening to what the aunt said, Tang Yu was about to walk into the kitchen, but from the corner of her eye, she saw a sudden change in expression on the TV cabinet and walked over. She walked over and went straight to the family photo on the TV cabinet. Auntie, this shouldn't be placed here. Tang Yu, who had been speaking softly just now, suddenly changed his tone and sounded unhappy. Ah! Auntie was a little surprised by her sudden change of attitude, and she didn't even react yet. Zhang Wanan also noticed it, turned around and saw that Tang Yu was holding the family photo she had just put up with a dark face. Mom, I put that there. Wasn't it always there before? Zhang Wanan walked over to explain, and helped her aunt to rescue her. After all, she was the one who put it in the first place. This one has changed its location a long time ago. It's no longer here, it's here, Tang Yu said, and put the family photo in the bottom drawer of the coffee table. Seeing the family portrait being put into a dark drawer, Zhang Wanan felt puzzled again. That was the only family photo of their family. She couldn't figure out why Tang Yu did this. It's too bad to put it in a drawer. Bring it up, Zhang Wanan said. It will gather dust when placed on the table, Tang Yu explained stiffly, but Zhang Wanan knew that this was definitely not the reason. I can wipe it, Zhang Wanan said. You're not at home very often, how do you wipe it? Tang Yu said, glaring at her and no longer looking at her, turning around and entering the kitchen. Zhang Wanan suddenly felt that Tang Yu looked strange to others, and his tone of voice was not familiar to her at all. She also vaguely complained that Zhang Wanan had been living in the Lu family for a long time and would not come back. End of this chapter. The Lu family's wife is so sweet. Author, Yun. Chapter 368. Chapter 368 Analysis. But Zhang Wanan couldn't figure out the reason. She pursed her lips tightly and walked to the coffee table, slowly squatted down, opened the drawer, took out the family photo, put it in her arms, and carried it to her room. Since the living room can't accommodate this family photo, let's put it in her room. She can accommodate it, and the bedroom can also accommodate it. Zhang Wanan entered the bedroom but did not go out. She turned on her mobile phone and dialed the number. It only rang a few times before the person on the other side picked up. Hello, and a familiar voice came from the other end of the phone. Loses who? I don't know what's wrong. Mom, are you sick? Zhang Wanan was a little worried but couldn't figure it out, so she thought about it and called Loses who. Maybe he could comfort her wandering mind. Loses who answered the phone in the living room. He glanced at Lu Lin and Lin 11, who came back early today, and then walked aside with the phone in hand. What's wrong? Loses who asked softly. I have to say that Loses whose voice was really healing. As soon as he spoke to Zhang Wanan, he felt much better. She put away the only family photo of our family. She seemed not to want to see it. It was a bit abnormal, Jongwon said while stroking the family photo that she brought in with one hand. How could it be? Loses who frowned slightly. Logically speaking, it shouldn't be. It's the only photo of their family, and it's also the only photo they have in mind. Why wouldn't they want to put it in a few more corners before it's too late? I don't know either, and she came back from a trip today smelling of cigarette smoke. I don't know if she smoked, but she said it was someone else's smoking that blew onto her clothes. I believe her. But I can't help but think about it. Jongwon said something that happened today that she felt was wrong. Don't think too much. Maybe Auntie is just a little tired. You should be more considerate of her and observe her recent condition. If you find anything wrong, just tell me, okay? Don't worry, Loses who comforted her softly. Jongwon pursed her lips tightly and said nothing. Don't be unhappy, I bought some snacks when I came back today, can I bring them to school for you tomorrow? Loses who didn't hear Jongwon's voice speak again for a while. Well, ask your mother for me. Maybe she will know the situation. After all, the two of you will be together often. It took a while before a voice came from the other side. Okay, let me ask, don't think too much, finish your meal early and rest, or talk more with your aunt. Good. It's great to have you, Jongwon added. It was great to have him. She trusted Loses who very much and was willing to tell him what was on her mind. The two of them talked for a few more words before hanging up the phone. After Loses who hung up the phone, he returned to the living room and sat on the sofa. Lin 11 looked up at him and asked, "Is it Anan?" Loses who nodded. Lin 11 didn't ask any more questions after she knew it was Jongwon, because she felt that the two children must be talking on the phone to whisper something between them, and it was not easy for her to get involved. Loses who saw that she had no intention of continuing the question and asked Lin 11. Mom, have you noticed anything wrong with Aunt Tang recently? Lin 11 tensed up when she heard Loses who's words. What's wrong? What did Anan tell you? Lin 11 did not answer her question but became very nervous, which surprised Loses who. It's okay, Anan just said something and said she was worried about Aunt Tang. What did Anan say? Loses who glanced at Lin 11, sighed and recounted what Jongwon said. After hearing this, Lin 11 had the same expression as Loses who at that time, with the same frown. But she didn't know what happened to Tang Yu recently. She reached out and poked Lu Lin. Can you analyze it? End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Lu family's wife is so sweet. Author, Yoon. Chapter 369. Chapter 369, Not Letting Go Yet. Lu Lin said tisk for a few seconds and then spoke. Probably because I still feel uneasy about Lao Zhang, I feel uncomfortable when I see the photos, so I want to hide them. After all, out of sight is out of mind, Lu Lin said. Then she has dark circles under her eyes every day. Is it because she thinks about Lao Zhang at night and can't sleep well? Well, Anan just called and said that she smells of cigarette smoke. She may have been smoking to relieve stress recently, but I'm just guessing. Then, what should we do now? Go out for a walk. You two are good sisters. If you try to persuade her more, she will listen to you. Okay, I'll try again, Lin 11 said with a sad look on his face. She thought that even if Tang Yu didn't want to go out, he had to go home and rest, otherwise the more he cared about things in the store, the more chaos he would get. The other side. Auntie had packed everything up and left. Jongwon didn't come out since she returned to the room with the photo in her arms. Tang Yu didn't call her until the meal was ready. Jongwon slowly came out and sat down. Tang Yu looked at her and asked, "What's wrong? Are you angry with your mother?" Jongwon shook her head. She had no intention of getting angry with Tang Yu. It's okay if you don't. Mom thought you were angry with her. Let's eat, Tang Yu said with a slight smile. Looking at her, she didn't seem to have any intention of mentioning the photo, and Zhang Wanan didn't ask. The two of them ate the meal in silence. No matter how delicious the meal was, no one praised its deliciousness. After dinner, the two of them sat on the sofa and watched TV together. From time to time, they would talk a few words about the plot on the TV and talk to the male and female protagonists. The night passed like this, and when the time came, Tang Yu prepared hot milk for Zhang Wanan as usual. Anan, drink the milk and go to bed early. Tang Yu thoughtfully pushed the hot milk in front of Zhang Wanan. Zhang Wanan held the warm milk in her hands and whispered, "Thank you. Go back to the room early. After drinking, Mom will go back to the room first." "Okay, good night." "Good night." Tang Yu did not lie down directly on the bed after returning to the room. She just sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the night in a daze. Jinjinj was brightly lit at night, just like during the day, but when she looked at the night outside, she always felt empty, feeling that the city was swallowing her up bit by bit. "And every night when I lie down and face the ceiling, I feel like there is a huge whirlpool on the ceiling that wants to me into it." That's why she couldn't sleep. Tang Yu was in a daze and didn't hear the knock on the door. Zhang Wanan knocked a few times and pushed the door open. She saw Tang Yu with his back to her and looked out the window in a daze, so she called Tang Yu a few times, but after a few calls, she found that Tang Yu was in a daze. It was as if you couldn't hear. Zhang Wanan felt panicked, and when she got closer, she called out softly, "Mom." "Huh." Tang Yu finally came to his senses, but his eyes were a little dull when he looked back. "Why are you sitting here without taking a rest?" Zhang Wanan glanced outside and sat on the ground at Tang Yu's feet. "Get up, the ground is cold," Tang Yu said and went to pull her. "It's okay, there is a carpet, and it feels good to sit on the ground." Zhang Wanan raised her head and smiled at Tang Yu. Tang Yu looked at her helplessly and smiled. "Have you finished drinking the milk?" Tang Yu asked. "After I finished drinking, I went back to the room and came to see you after I couldn't sleep for a while. It turns out you weren't asleep either." Zhang Wanan smiled. Actually, it was a lie that she couldn't sleep. She didn't even go back to the room at all. She just wanted to see if Tang Yu was asleep. When she first knocked on the door, no one answered. She thought Tang Yu was asleep, but when she opened the door, she saw a man staring out the window in a daze. Tang Yu looked out the window and said with a wry smile, "I can't sleep." Zhang Wanan looked up at Tang Yu and was silent for a moment. End of this chapter. The Lu family's wife is so sweet. Author, Yun. Chapter 370. Chapter 370. I've been a little tired lately. The couple looked at the world outside and were silent for a long time. In the end, Zhang Wanan spoke to break the silence. "Mom, I've been a little tired recently and want to go out and relax," Zhang Wanan said. Tang Yu lowered his head to look at her and said after a few seconds, "Is there something unsatisfactory in your studies?" Zhang Wanan thought about it for a moment. In fact, there was nothing unhappy about her, and she didn't feel very tired. Her main purpose was to go out with Tang Yu, just to relax and promote the relationship between the two. She nodded along with Tang Yu's words, and just regarded it as something unsatisfactory in her studies. "Well, I'll take you out to play another day. It would be great to go to a place with mountains and water. We can climb mountains and play in the water." Zhang Wanan fantasized about traveling with Tang Yu. Tang Yu looked at the little girl sitting on the ground with a smile on his face and nodded. "I will definitely satisfy you by then," Tang Yu vowed. Seeing that his goal was achieved, Zhang Wanan spoke to Tang Yu for a while and stood up. Because her legs were numb and uncomfortable when she got up from sitting cross-legged on the ground, she stamped her feet vigorously and held onto the edge of the bed to barely stand. Tang Yu supported her and said, "I told you to disobey me and sit on the ground. Now you're better. Are your legs numb?" She was like most mothers who complained about their children's disobedience. Zhang Wanan suddenly felt the tip of her nose sore. She sniffed and smiled sheepishly. After the numbness subsided, Zhang Wanan tried to take a few steps. When she reached the door, she turned back and said, "Mom, stop looking outside all the time. Go to bed early." Tang Yu nodded and watched Zhang Wanan go out, then closed the door. She was left alone to face loneliness and darkness. After listening to Zhang Wanan's words, Tang Yu turned around and walked to the bedside table and opened the drawer. There were several small white bottles in the drawer. They were all the same. She took a bottle, opened it, put a few pills in her hand, and then picked it up. The water on the table was given away. Tang Yu took the medicine and lay on the bed. She closed her eyes and saw only one person. The familiar figure of that person always liked to run around in her head. She wanted to catch it but couldn't, and finally shed tears in despair. Tears slid down the corners of his eyes and soaked into the pillow. Medicines no longer work for Tang Yu. This is the most difficult time of the day. If you are lucky, you can take a nap. If you are unlucky, you just stare until the sky gradually turns white. I had bad luck that night. I tossed and turned and couldn't fall asleep. She messed up her hair in pain, and cried all night long, and finally her dry eyes felt uncomfortable. But in the morning, she still cheered up, because she wanted to show her best side and not let more people worry about her, let alone Zhang Wanan. She knew that Zhang Wanan had vaguely seen her recent mood in her actions. She had to cheer up and adjust her emotions. She still had to be busy at work. After all, only work could numb her and prevent her from having random thoughts. However, Lin 11 always asked her to go home early because she was worried about her. She thought that as long as she made changes, Lin 11 would not rush her to come back early. It would have been nice to have someone at home who could talk to me if I came back early, but there wasn't. When I came back, I was alone. Tang Yu washed his face with cold water, then took out his cosmetics to cover his dark circles before going out to make breakfast. It was still early and Zhang Wanan was still sleeping. Tang Yu was careful not to wake Zhang Wanan up. There were not many ingredients at home, so Tang Yu only made a bowl of noodles, but the noodles were also nutritious and she would not treat her daughter badly. She always felt ashamed because she missed Zhang Wanan's growth for several years, so she wanted to compensate Zhang Wanan properly. Thinking of this, Tang Yu felt that he should cheer up. End of this chapter.